All right, so if you guys are there, can anybody fill me in from last week? What were we looking at? We were in Genesis chapter 15. Does anybody remember? You guys weren't here? All right, you want me to help? So, Megan, go ahead. He did, but you're right, though. He promised him a child. He actually promised him a very specific child. Like he made it really personal this time in repeating the promise. Okay? So, and he showed him. Abram asked, how am I going to know that these things actually happen? Like, how am I going to know that they're going to come to pass? What happened? Yeah, so God cuts a covenant with Abram, right? This is what the word covenant means. It means to cut. And what did they cut? Animals. They cut them in half. And they laid them on opposite sides of one another. And what would happen is that blood, it ran down in the middle ravine. And what would happen with those two kings or whoever it was, they'd walk through it together in a binding agreement that said, if I fail to uphold my end of the covenant, let the same thing happen to me that happened to these animals. We killed these animals and took their lives because of how valuable this agreement is that we're making, right? But what you said is absolutely true. God is the only one that walked through that blood. And in essence, what he was saying to Abram was, you are not going to be able to uphold this side of the covenant. I'm the only one who's going to be able to. Right? Because so far in Abram's life, what have we seen? We've seen faithful Abram. We've seen faithless Abram. We've seen faithful Abram, faithless Abram, lying Abram, trusting Abram, roller coaster, right? Just up and down. And the whole time, God has proven to us and to Abram that he is the faithful God. So he makes this covenant with him and says, it's on me, dude, not on you. I've promised this. I will put my name to it by doing this covenant and showing you that I am the faithful God. It was really neat, right? So today we're skipping 6 chapters. I'm going to fill you in on what happens in between. And we're only doing this so that we can try and stay on track to finish Genesis by the end of the year. Okay? So this is what happens in 16 to 21. Sarah distrusts God when he tells them that they're going to have a child. Right? Again, chapter 15 started with, you're going to have a child. You're going to actually have a son who is going to be the fulfillment of this promise, and eventually more are going to come from him, and the nation's going to happen, right? All of this, Sarah distrusts him. And so what she does is she gives Abram her servant. Because she says, I'm too old. How am I going to bear a child? I don't trust this. And so she leaned on her own understanding, which is going to be really important tonight. She leaned on her own understanding and gave him her servant. Now, that's not what God said was going to happen, is it? Eventually, Ishmael was born. But God changes Abram's name in chapter 17. He makes another covenant with him, and he promises him Isaac, and Sarah laughs. Now, Sarah wasn't the only one that laughed. Abram laughed as well, but in this chapter, Sarah's the one who laughs after distrusting God and giving him her servant. Sodom and Gomorrah are then destroyed. However, Lot is saved. If you're not familiar with these stories, I also recommend you go and read them. If it's been a little while, the interesting thing about Lot is when we find him in Sodom and Gomorrah, he's not really doing righteous things. He's actually sitting at the gate participating in the things of the city. But the really interesting thing to me about Lot being saved is that the New Testament tells us that Lot was righteous. And if it had not been for one verse in the New Testament, we wouldn't have never known that Lot was saved. Isn't that fascinating? But that's besides the point. Okay? And then what happens again? Abraham does what? Lies about his wife. He gets into a new territory. He's worried that they're going to find his wife beautiful and they're going to kill him. So he lies about Sarah again. We've seen this play out before, haven't we? Every time it's happened, the kings have just been like, hey, look, dude, she's your wife. Why would you do this to us? Here, we're going to give you resources so you can leave. They don't kill him. Same thing happens again. You would think that by this point in Abraham's life, God has made covenants with him, shown him amazing things, and he's still up here and then down here. Who does this sound like to you? Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that because that's exactly how I feel, right? Because I have days where, man, I feel like I'm up here, and then I have days where I feel like I'm down here. But thanks be to God that Jesus did what he did, right? Because that's the only reason that any of us are saved. Because if it wasn't for that, our life is like this, which means that we're not good enough to be with God. But Jesus makes us good enough, okay? And then Isaac's born, and Abraham is, guess what? About 100 years old. He's an old man. Sarah's about 90? Yeah, she's about 90 years old when Isaac's born. God, again, fulfills his promise that he made in chapter 15, to which, remember, he was essentially saying, if I don't do this, do the same thing to me that we did to the animals. And so God is continually proving himself to Abram and to Sarah, or Abraham and Sarah now. Their names are changed. And then he makes some peace concerning some different wells in the area. That one's going to come into play later when we get into Genesis 30s. Okay? So here's where we are tonight is Genesis 22. For the sake of time, I'm going to read and stop along the way. Is that okay? I mean, of course it is. You guys are like, yeah, you go ahead and do all the reading, buddy. You got it. You have to listen, though, or read along. Okay? That's my deal. Does anybody want to make a covenant? Graham's like, no. I'm in agreement with that, yeah. Charlie, you don't like that idea? I'm going to read. Thank you. All right, so Genesis 22. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. Now let me stop you real quick. The very first verse here, it came about after these things. I want you to look at my Bible for a minute. This is really interesting, okay? We have all these different pages in here. It's been about 13 years, give or take, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I want you to realize one page in your Bible sometimes means that we're looking at 13 years worth of life that we don't know much about. We don't know what God did to work in his life. But 13 years has transpired since we turned this page. Okay? So it's been 13 years. God is testing Abraham. And in verse 2, he said, take now your son, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. Whoa, right? Okay, it's getting kind of real. You guys know the story. It just amazes me every time. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So the 2 of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the 2 of them walked on together. Okay, we're going to stop here for a minute. What's happening? What's going on in this passage? Sam. It's not really murder, though, right? Because God's asking him to do it. Okay? But he is going to kill him. He's going to slay him. Okay? We'll talk about that. What else is happening? Like, what do you notice from this passage? Anything? Graham, I see your hand. Yeah, right? Like, this is where it gets really interesting. I mean, you got to remember, Abraham has probably offered burnt offerings a lot in his life. He's 100 years old, or he's actually older than 100 now. He's probably offered a ton. We know he's offered some in the previous chapters. You think along the way, he has probably shown Isaac what it means to worship God and build an altar, right? So Isaac clearly has understanding here that normally when we go to do this, we have a lamb or we have an animal of some kind that comes with us. Where is the animal? And Abraham's response is what? God will provide the lamb, right? God will provide the lamb. Okay? Anything else? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the incredible amount of trust that Abraham has in the Lord right now is insane, isn't it? Because he waited so long for this promise that God made to him all the way back in Genesis chapter 12. He has finally fulfilled it through Isaac, and then God is now telling him, take the very son that I promised you up to this mountain. Do you know what's actually happening right here? He's kind of setting up a question, isn't he? Is God going to uphold the covenant that he made in chapter 15? Right? I mean, that's essentially what's happening, because part of the covenant was you're going to have a child, and you're going to have a lineage, you're going to have offspring, you're going to have a nation, you're going to bless the world. He's setting up this question right here, okay? So thank you. Great observation. Anything else? Or shall we move on? Aiden? We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get there. Let's read the rest of this then, okay? Just because we are a little crunched on time, and I want to get to this. Then they came to the place of which God had told him. This is verse 9. And Abraham built the altar there, and arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it will be provided. And then a few more verses, okay? Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing, and I have not withheld your son, your only son, I will greatly bless you, and I will multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned with the young men, and they took and arose and went to Beersheba, and Abraham lived there. What happens? God gives them a command. They go there. Isaac doesn't know what's going on. And then what happens here in these verses? The Lord provided a ram caught in the thicket. Right in the middle of it, right? And they go up there. He binds him, puts him on the wood, and then the angel of the Lord appears. Okay? Now I want you to think about this. This son that that Abraham put on the altar, because you guys don't have children yet, I think this is a fair statement to make. Abraham's faith is just so crazily trusting God right now. I guarantee you, there's nothing in your life that you love more right now than Abraham loved Isaac. I guarantee it. So, and when you have children, you'll understand that. He's placed him here on the altar in obedience to what God has told him to do. And then God stops him and provides a ram to take his place. You see what's happening here, right? And then at the very end of it, what does he do? He blesses them again, reaffirms everything that he's already said. Remember how I said it's kind of setting up that question of whether or not God's going to keep his covenant from Genesis 15? And God's just proven to him again, right? I'm the faithful one. You are the one who's up here when you're faithful and down here when you're faithless. I'm the God who never changes and is always the same. That's what he's showing to him right here. So I have a couple of questions that I want to kind of guide our discussion through here, because you guys are obviously very capable, and we've done this for so long now of making observations to know what's happening in the test. I ask this question. God tests Abraham. Why on earth does he test Abraham? Like, I guarantee you, at some point in your life, somebody's going to ask you a question like this. If God is so good and loving and kind and is offering salvation, why would he do something like this to Isaac and to Abraham? What do you think? To strengthen his faith? Yeah, certainly. To see if he still fears the Lord and wants to obey him, right? Yeah. Any of the other ideas? Chloe? Yeah, absolutely. Everything that you guys have said, okay? I want you to think about this. With Abram and with Sarah, when it came to Isaac, what did they try to do? They tried to lean on their own understanding. And so they went after the servant girl to have a baby to fulfill the promise. When Abram and Sarah went into these places, Abram lied about his wife, right? All of these different times, Abram has shown what it looks like to trust in our own understanding instead of trusting in the understanding of God. And I'm sure that Abram, when God told him, had absolutely no idea why on earth God would tell him this. Right? Like, could you imagine being in Abraham's position and being asked this question or being commanded to do this and going, what in the world? Why? You've given me this child who the scriptures say, if you back up to the very beginning, your only son, the one that you love, Isaac. God made it incredibly personal and said, I'm testing you. Because that's part of our problem is we have these humanistic tendencies, don't we? That we want to understand from our own reason and ability instead of having to trust and not know what's going to happen. But that's exactly what happens here with Abraham. He leans not on his own understanding, but on the Lord's. And so God is trying to refine him. He's trying to change him. He's trying to show him something about himself and about God. Because when he tests him to see, I'm going to use what you said, Zach. When he's testing him to see whether he fears God still, what happens when he tests him? It reveals what's actually going on. It reveals what is in Abram's heart, right? And so in this case, God is not only doing this to prove himself and to show that the covenant he made is still good, he's also right here showing Abram, dude, look at what I've done in your life. Look at how I've changed you and made you more into the image that I want you to be. It's amazing, isn't it? Now let's talk about Moriah, Mount Moriah. It's where God called him to go and to take this lamb. Where is it today? It's there. Do you know how fascinating this is, though, guys? Does anybody know what this is? What this area is? Who said it? Dome of the Rock, right? It's on the Temple Mount. This is where, Mount Moriah, where the temple was constructed under Solomon and then reconstructed after they came back from exile. Do you understand the significance of what's happened here? The place where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and then God provided a lamb to take Isaac's place, became the place where God would meet with his people through the sacrifice of an animal so that they wouldn't have to die. And then eventually when Jesus came, he was not crucified and killed here on the Temple Mount, but it was really close, wasn't it? It's right outside the city gates, somewhere. The city gates probably, I don't know the orient of this, but somewhere over there or whatever. Okay? This place became so incredibly important because from the very beginning, God is trying to reveal something to us about who he is. You see that, right? That's so incredible. And it's a small fact or a small detail, but it's really important. So can you go back to that slide for a minute? And I wanted to point this out. Okay, I wanted to point this out. Two things. I'm going to skip C because we kind of talked about that a little bit. The angel of the Lord. Did you guys see the couple of times where it said the angel of the Lord appeared? I'm going to tell you what I personally believe. Some scholars disagree, but for most of Christian history, a lot of people have felt the same way. Whenever you see the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament, that is such a specific title. It means the messenger of Yahweh, okay? It's such a specific title, though. I think that is Jesus. I think it's a pre-incarnate appearing of Christ that we call a Christophany. And if you look at the language that's used, specifically here in the second one, right? By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. Right? There's some language used here that's really interesting, and we're going to see the angel of the Lord a couple of times in Genesis as we keep going. It's really fascinating, right? And every time it's mentioned, it's just one time. But if there's another angel in the Old Testament that's ever mentioned, you know what we normally see? An angel appeared, or the angel Gabriel, right? Normally that's what we see. I think the specificness of the angel of the Lord actually is Christ, and that here in this moment of the sacrifice, Jesus is the one who is appearing. It's pretty fascinating. So if you're curious, you can go home and do some study, and we can talk about it. Whether you agree, disagree, whatever you want. It's a really fun thing to look at. Okay? And then this other thing that's really cool. I once did a study on trees and mountains in the Bible. It sounds super nerdy, and it is. And so you should join the nerd wagon, okay? Yeah, we can do the study, Jameson. Uh, but this, when I did this study, you know what was really fascinating to me? Oftentimes, when a lot of these really important things happen in the Bible, they happen on mountaintops and involving trees. So think about this with Abraham and Isaac. He goes up this mountain, and then this ram is caught where? In a bush, something wooden, right? Think about Jesus. When Jesus is killed, he walks up, and he's hung up on what? Wood, right? Something related to a tree. In the garden. In the garden, you had this kind of like high place, and then in the middle of the garden, you had what? A tree. Guys, it's so nerdy, but it's so fun, okay? Burning bush up on a mountain. It's a bush, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? So when we see these things in Genesis, we ought to stop for a minute and go, what is about to happen? We got to pump the brakes a little bit, right? So in this instant, he goes up on a mountain. They have an altar built, and then this ram is caught up in the thicket. It's really interesting, okay? Now we got to get going. So they name the place, the Lord will provide. This is the first time that one of the names that we use for God, Jehovah Jireh, is mentioned. The Lord will provide because he provided what? The lamb. He was caught in the thicket, okay? Okay. Go ahead to the next one for me. This is where the conversation gets fun because you guys should be able to see this by now. We're like, I say we're 22 chapters in. We're not really, but we are. Where does God give and give and give and give in this chapter? A child? Yeah? What else did God give Abraham? Yeah, he gave him the ability to trust him. Okay? Yes, ma'am? Reassurance of his promise. Anything else? What did it say in the very beginning that he was doing with Abraham? You go to school and you take a... God gave Abraham a test. So the next time in your life when something doesn't go the way that you think it ought to go, or you're trying to trust in your own understanding, I want you to stop and try to change your mind frame about it to see that it's not that the enemy is attacking you. Sometimes it's that God is trying to refine you. He gave Abraham a test here, a test that you and I couldn't even picture because of how insane it was. And yet God gives him this test. And you see this, right? There's a couple more things that I put up here. We're out of time, so I'm just going to kind of run through them. He gave him a son. He gave him the location that became something incredibly important later on. He gave him the ram. He renewed the blessing, right? He told him again, I'm going to bless you in the same way that I've already told you so many times before, with so many people that's going to be like the stars and the sand. Okay? So Lillian, go to our next one, please. All right, this is where I want to hear from you guys again. What marks of wisdom do we see in the passage? Yeah, right? Like, again, this is an example for us of what it looks like to trust in God and His understanding when everything in our life is falling apart, right? It'll be difficult to do, but man, I mean, this is one of the moments of Abraham's life where he was up here. And do you know, this is what's fascinating to me. Did you see when he was talking to the guys that had the donkeys, he said, "We will return," plural. Do you know what the New Testament says about this moment? The New Testament in the book of Hebrews says that Abraham believed that God would resurrect Isaac from the dead. So he went ahead with it because he trusted God. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? In fact, at this point in Abraham's life, he probably understands the least about what's going on, but he is probably the wisest that he's ever been in his life. Isn't that remarkable? It's just incredible to me that we're seeing this example of Abraham, knowing that we're like him, because a few chapters before, when we have these really great days, a few days ago in my life, I'm probably lying, right? I'm probably down here. But God is the faithful one. Lily. He's living in peace, right? Walking in healthy relationships by trusting God, and he's probably preparing Isaac along the way, which is really good. I'm going to save us a little bit of time. I know you guys probably have some thoughts. We're just so far behind, and this side is terrible. This side looks better, okay? I think truthfully in this passage, we see, like I said, he doesn't understand anything, but he's probably the wisest he's ever been in his life up to this point. Because in this moment, he shows us something about every single one of these traits. He trusts in God, walks in healthy relationships, is seeking good counsel. He's speaking carefully, isn't he? He's not revealing too much to Isaac, but he's also telling Isaac, well, we will be back. He had trust, exercising self-control. He managed his resources. You said he lives in peace. Like, this is what I mean when I say God wants to change you. You're not going to be perfect in this world, but eventually you will be. And along the way, you're going to have mountaintop moments like Abraham had here with Isaac, where you can look at your life and say, God is the only reason that I am even here. That's just that's how God works, guys. He works by tests. He works by fire. I mean, literally, the fire of the altar. Okay? So our last question is this, because we are definitely out of time, and I'm sorry. I will do better next week, okay? Is anybody in a rush? Does anybody need to leave? We all good? Okay. A couple more minutes, okay? Where do we see the gospel in this, guys? Like, huh? I mean, yeah, everywhere. So give me some examples. Lillian. The lamb, right? Yes. God provided the lamb. Isaac asked him, where is the lamb? And what was Abram's response? But the Lord will. And then they get up on the mountain, and then God literally provides the ram in their place so that Isaac doesn't have to die. It's Jesus. You see that? Just like Jesus walked up to that high place and got on that tree, he took our place, guys. Like this passage, if you are a Jew looking for a Messiah and your little trigger things or whatever they are not going off, you're not paying attention. But because you and I are on the other side of the cross, we get to see in moments like this just how faithful God is to us. Now, and I say this because had sin never entered the world, we would have always known God as the ultimate creator, beautiful, good, judge, just, all of that, right? But because Adam and Eve sinned, what God is revealing to us here in stories like this is what? He is faithful. He is merciful. He is redeeming. He is generous and gracious to us. I mean, He's doing this for His glory, and so that you and I, when we see Him and know Him, we have nothing but praise and thanksgiving. Because how many of you deserve to be in heaven right now? None of us. But by what basis can we actually be in heaven right now? Because of the mercy, the redemption, the forgiveness, the grace that Jesus gave to us that was pictured here in Isaac's sacrifice. It's amazing, isn't it? And Jesus was the real only Son that was loved. That's incredible. So are you guys starting to, now that we're a couple of weeks into this, are you starting to pick up on like, man, if I'm going through the Bible and I'm trying to figure out how to read this, like, are you starting to connect some of these dots? It's incredible. God is the one who wrote this, and He gave it to us for our benefit. Okay, that's all we've got. I'm done. I want to send you guys home with this mission. We've talked about this. Instead of reading 2 chapters, I want to give you guys this challenge, and if you come back like I told the middle schoolers and you can talk to me about it, I'll give you a free drink or something, or a snack or something from back there, okay? We talked about the chiasm before, which is really that mirrored verses. The first and last verse are the same, or at least similar. Then the second and second to last are the same and whatnot, right? And then they all come to that focal point. Genesis chapter 22 is the exact same thing. It's a chiastic poem. If you can find for me what that focal point is of this chapter that God wanted us to hear, come back and tell me. I'll let you have a free drink or a snack from that bar. Okay? All right. Any questions, guys? No? Y'all are tired. I can tell. Y'all are more tired than middle school was. What? I'm just kidding. That's all right, though. Okay. Let me pray for us, guys, and then we can get out of here, okay? Father, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for your word. I thank you that you have revealed to us all the things that you have about who you are. Lord, I ask that as we leave here that we would be changed by it. We'd be changed by your grace. And that when we think about you, we can't think of anything other than just the incredible goodness and how much you've loved us through your Son. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.